Here's the shape of the rest of the afternoon on BBC Two, with James Martin and Anthony Worrell-Thompson taking on the Ready Steady Cook Challenge next. 9 more contestants chance their luck with Anne at 5:05, and then we settle down for a film classic at 10:06 in David Lean's A Passage to India.
Who are you calling ugly? Have you had a look at yourself recently? Sit yourselves down for the best treat of Christmas, Cinderella.
Join Wayne Sleep and take your front row seat at the Royal Opera House for Cinderella, Friday at 2:35. The Art of Performance, this Christmas on BBC Two.
The new issue of Radio Times contains full details of forthcoming BBC programmes, together with complete listings for all major free-to-air and other television channels.
Flying. Today they brought traffic on the King's Road to a halt as they marched down to the town hall.
You go to America.
Another health trust struggles to balance its books. It follows news of thousands of job cuts across London and the South East over the past year. Nearly 1,500 in the north of our region, more than 1,000 in the south, 300 in West London and 650 in the east. That brings the total cuts to more than 3,500. In a moment we'll hear from Health Minister Andy Burnham, but first Paul Curran reports from Hertfordshire.
These are the 2 hospitals affected by today's job losses, the Lister in Stevenage and the Queen Elizabeth II in Welwyn Garden City. Where the cuts will bite exactly hasn't been announced, but the health union Unison says it's a devastating blow.
We think the situation's likely to get worse because it seems to us that the funding is going to be permanently reduced, and we might be faced, particularly in the eastern region where the funding formula don't help our trusts, with a permanent reduction in service.
Both hospitals had been expecting some cuts. The NHS Trust needed to save £9.6 million this year as part of a long-term recovery plan. However, today's announcement almost doubles that figure. The Trust says it's recently lost income because GPs are making fewer referrals to the hospitals.
We've received notification in the last few months that primary care trusts want to buy less from us. So they want to arrange for patients to be treated in more community settings. And that means we've got to respond. If we ignore that reality, the problem will get worse and we'll end up taking more drastic measures in years to come.
At this time, the Trust says it can't be specific about where the jobs will go. It hopes that any jobs that are lost will be through natural wastage and that redundancies will be kept to a minimum. It insists that patient care won't be affected. Unison blames the government's boom and bust funding for the problems. The local Labour MP has described today's news as gloomy, but believes services will improve in the long term.
What we've been doing is trying to keep services that are almost too run down to operate going. I think we need to amalgamate some of our services, look at the way in which we deliver those services and try to do them more efficiently.
The cuts are due to be confirmed next month and could include a couple of ward closures. Paul Curran, BBC London News in Hertfordshire.
Well, the Health Minister Andy Burnham joins us now. Mr Burnham, in the case of East and North Hertfordshire Trust, 500 jobs is 10% of its workforce. Are you saying that's no impact on patients?
I'm not. I'm saying that that's not 500 compulsory redundancies. It's a reduction in headcount and posts at that trust, but that may be partly through reducing the use of agency staff or not filling posts that are vacant. I'm saying that most trusts in the country are balancing their books and improving and providing improved patient care, and that should be possible for all.
But when we look at figures across London and the home counties, 3,500 job cuts, you're saying not all of them will be compulsory. Do you think that in a year's time we'll be sitting here saying that actually care hasn't been affected or in fact improved?
Well, I am saying very strongly that that's not 3,000 plus compulsory redundancies. It is true that headcount is being reduced at some trusts, but that doesn't mean compulsory redundancies. And I'm also saying that since 1997, there has been a huge increase in the staff working in our National Health Service. Nurses, doctors and staff at all levels. So we've got to see this in context. Yes, there are some difficult situations on the ground in some trusts this year, and I do feel sorry for staff who are facing uncertainty, but we have to keep the balance here. And of course, times changed. Care is moved out of hospitals and into the community. It's changing times in the NHS. That creates uncertainty, but it doesn't mean it's not the right thing to do for patient care.
And Mr Burnham, you say changing times, but it's the trusts say it's the timescale you're giving them that is putting the pressure on them to cut those jobs. Is it possible that these targets you're setting are too high?
Well, the vast majority of trusts are both balancing their books and providing improved patient care year on year. Now, there are some particular challenges in some parts of the country. The right thing to do is to face up to those challenges, to address them, because if we don't, they get worse year on year and build a big deficit and bigger problems in years to come. So the right thing to do is to face up to the problems and help trusts through the difficult period of getting their trusts into financial balance. But that's what we're doing. We're not shirking from that responsibility. But at the end of the day, the NHS will be in a much sounder place having gone through that process.
Mr. Andy Burnham, many thanks indeed for your time this evening. Three bankers who worked for NatWest in the City of London are facing extradition to the US on charges of fraud relating to the collapse of the American company Enron. They claim their case highlights a lack of safeguards for anyone doing deals with American companies. It comes after the European Court of Human Rights rejected their attempt to block their extradition to the United States. Our special correspondent Kurt Barling reports.
We end up finally in Houston.
There are now less than 3 weeks before this man and 2 of his colleagues will be flown to the United States to face charges of an alleged fraud which took place in London. They face no prosecution here, but have fallen foul of an extradition treaty which does not allow British citizens to defend themselves first in the British courts.
The allegations against us are that we defrauded NatWest Bank here in London. Everything that we need to conduct that defence, witnesses, materials, evidence, is here in London. We simply will not be able to defend ourselves in Texas, but we could here.
Millions of transactions are carried out each year between businesses here in the city and America. What business leaders are worried about, including the Confederation of British Industry, is that innocent decisions may end up with individuals facing trial in America.
American prosecutors investigating the collapse of the American company Enron have spread their net across the Atlantic. The problem, say civil liberties groups, is that this case sets an unhealthy precedent.
The Act doesn't really seem to allow the courts here to consider the fact whether somebody could actually be prosecuted in this country rather than being sent off to a foreign jurisdiction where there are all sorts of problems with the fact they're separated from their families, they don't have proper access to lawyers, they may well be banged up for a lengthy period before their case comes to trial.
Whilst he believes he will now have to face trial in America, David Birmingham believes it could harm the way the city conducts its international business.
The US criminal justice system is capable of criminalising conduct anywhere in the world, whether or not anybody's ever set foot in the US. The extradition arrangements that this UK government has put in place with the US now subject British businessmen in their everyday lives here in London to the long-arm reach of US jurisdiction.
Pending the outcome of this case, there are already 13 other British businessmen in the queue awaiting extradition to the US. Kurt Barling, BBC London News.
A judge has ordered the acquittal of 4 men accused of being part of a blackmail attempt at Queen's Park Rangers. Former shareholder Gianni Palladini claimed he was punched and threatened with a pistol after being ambushed at the club. 2 men were cleared last week of taking part in the attack. Today, the judge told the court the remaining charges couldn't be allowed to stand. Government plans to scrap the limits on the number of night flights have been overturned again in the House of Lords. Earlier today, campaigners, including the leaders of several London boroughs, took their protest to Parliament, urging the Lords to stop any increase in flights. The government wants to set restrictions on a different basis, taking into account noise levels instead. Normal services at King's Cross Station have resumed for the first time since Monday morning. It was closed due to a fire at a nearby building site, and there were subsequent concerns over the possibility of gas cylinders exploding. Last night, the 200-metre exclusion zone was removed, allowing residents to return home. Police investigating the murder of the teenage model Sally-Anne Bowman have arrested a 35-year-old man. Sally-Anne, who was 18, was sexually assaulted and stabbed to death last September near her home in South Croydon. Matthew Morris reports.
Sally-Anne Bowman had just turned 18 when she was murdered last September. The aspiring model was sexually assaulted, then stabbed to death. The attack happened just yards from her family's home in South Croydon, but the killer has remained at large. Last night, police arrested a 35-year-old man in Surrey. He's being questioned at an unnamed South London police station. Police have been urgently trying to trace a suspect linked by DNA evidence to another indecent assault 5 years ago in nearby Purley. And they've also been asking young white men voluntarily to give samples of their DNA. So far, hundreds have done so, with thousands of tests pending. Last night's arrest is thought to be connected to the DNA screening, although police have disclosed no further details. Sally Ann's family feared the man who murdered their daughter might never be brought to justice. Sources are describing this latest arrest as very significant. Matthew Morris, BBC London News.
The voters of Bromley and Chislehurst go to the polls tomorrow to elect a new MP. The by-election, due to the death of the Conservative MP Eric Forth, will be a test of the impact of recent Labour crises and the effect of new leadership on the two main opposition parties. Our political editor Tim Donovan reports.
Along Bromley's well-trodden shopping precinct today came Charles Kennedy. Has the party yet recovered from his messy departure earlier in the year? By-elections are a Liberal speciality, few opportunities missed, and some here still remember a famous by-election win in nearby Orpington 40 years ago. But it will be hard to repeat here.
We're picking up on people's concerns, particularly about crime and about the health service locally.
Do you think you'd have a better chance here if you were still leader?
I don't think that's necessarily the case at all. I think that people see this as a growing party which is taking on Labour and Conservative alike, and that's what they're voting on.
At their campaign HQ, UKIP prepare their final push. Their candidates and MEP, they polled well around here in the last European and Assembly elections, and they say they're the only ones addressing the real issues.
They'll probably mend the sort of pavements and unblock drains, but who's actually discussing policy, national policies? Only UKIP. We're discussing immigration, we're discussing our relationship with the European Union, all the things that people are really worried about.
They're defending a 13,000 majority, but the Conservatives are leaving nothing to chance, even in the parts others have rarely reached. Their candidate leads the Tories on the London Assembly. He was selected ahead of two chosen ones on the so-called Cameron A-list. The suggestion here that the Conservatives are suspicious of newfangled ways.
A lot of people are commenting very positively about the changes and about his leadership, and because police is such a big issue in crime, his comments on human rights recently have gone down very well.
These may be yellow, but they were given by people over there who are Labour voters.
He did find some of those today, but many fear what tomorrow could bring. Some worried that Labour are playing for third at best. Iraq, asylum, human rights, the questions kept coming, but will the painstaking answers have won many over?
I actually find the reception today better than I found during the general election, which we won overall by a big majority, and where Rachel Reeves came a very good second.
You're here, but Tony Blair and Gordon Brown haven't been here. Why not?
I'm here. We've had a number of senior members of the Cabinet.
Why haven't they been here?
I'm delighted to be here. Well, they are not here, but they're delighted that I'm here, and I'm working very hard.
In the end, the outcome here may be less a reflection of local issues than the issue of leadership. Not only theirs, but can Sabine Campbell, after what some say is a shaky start, maintain the Lib Dems' great record in by-elections? And how has the new Cameron look gone down in Conservative heartlands like this? Tim Donovan, BBC London News.
And here's the full list of candidates standing in the Bromley and Chislehurst by-election. All that information on our website as well, of course, at bbc.co.uk/London. Now, the Chelsea pensioners have been given the freedom of their borough today. In a special ceremony, Kensington and Chelsea Council bestowed the honour on the veterans who stay at the Royal Hospital because it wanted to show its gratitude to them. Tom Edwards reports.
They're an integral part of Chelsea, and although they'll have seen many parades throughout their careers, never one where they've been given the freedom of the Royal Borough.
I think it's an honour for the hospital, and it won't happen again, the freedom won't happen again, but such events should carry on and on.
And do you look forward to going on parade still?
I do, yes. Yes, I do. Yes, well, I did it for a long, long time. Was out in civilian life for a long, long time. Come back here and it's like coming home.
The honour's ceremonial, and technically, due to ancient laws, it gives the Chelsea pensioners the right to parade on all ceremonial occasions, with fixed bayonets and colours flying. Today they brought traffic on the King's Road to a halt as they marched down to the Town Hall.
You go to America, you go around Europe, all parts of the world really, and everybody identifies the red coats, the formal dress of the inn pensioners, and they're a great symbol of Chelsea and Kensington, the whole of the borough, but also of service, and we think it's quite right that they're honoured, and we're very delighted to be able to do that today.
The Royal Hospital was founded in 1682. It's the largest home in the country for veteran soldiers. Many of the facilities, though, need updating, and it's trying to raise £35 million. Over the years, it's been possible to find among Chelsea pensioners men who have served in almost every conflict.
I think it is a part of the overall recognition of the contribution which the armed services have made over many, hundreds of years. Just so happens that it is this time, and we are here now to receive the freedom, which really also belongs to all those who were at the Royal Hospital before us.
Many others, like Winston Churchill, have been given the freedom of the Royal Borough in their time. This award is meant to underline the pride the area has in the Chelsea pensioners. Tom Edwards, BBC London News.
Wonderful. OK, let's get a check on the weather with Pete, who's interestingly found a virtual beach. Pete, where are you?
You're not going to believe this, Riz. I'm actually in the yard of the old Truman Brewery, just off Brick Lane. Now, about a year ago, a couple of friends were sat over there when this was all concrete, having a beer, thinking we could make this a lot nicer place to chill out of an evening. So they've imported all this sand all the way from the Caribbean. And, well, everybody's really enjoying it down here. And they're going to keep it going as long as the sun shines. And we're going to have a lot of sunshine for the rest of this week. Let's start off with the weather map, and you'll be able to see that we've got high pressure sitting over southern Scandinavia. That's high is important for us because it's keeping any weather fronts, any rain-bearing clouds well away from us. So whether you're going to come to Brick Lane to enjoy the beach, you're going to head down to Wimbledon, the only thing you'll have to worry about is the strength of the sun over the next few days. Incidentally, if you have to tear yourself away from the television and you're a tennis fan, there are hourly updates included in our news bulletins on our radio station 94.9 FM. Now this evening there's still some sunshine to enjoy. We will keep those clear skies overnight tonight. Temperatures in central London here in Brick Lane probably holding up at around about 12 Celsius, but out in the countryside could turn a wee bit chilly again, perhaps temperatures as low as 8 or 9 Celsius. Tomorrow, more sunshine to look forward to, and if anything, it's going to be a sunnier day. There will be a little bit of cloud around the middle of the day, but it shouldn't spread out quite as much as it did today, and because of that, it's going to be warmer tomorrow, up into the mid-20s, the high 70s in Fahrenheit. A little bit cooler across in Essex because the breeze will be coming in off the North Sea. On to Friday, and even hotter, more and more sunshine as we head into this weekend. The only problem over the weekend is that if we have temperatures up at around about 30 degrees, they could be just enough to trigger a few thunderstorms. But the outlook for the time being is pretty good for the tennis and pretty good for the beach here in the East End, Riz.
Pete, thanks very much. A bit too much enjoyment going on there. That's it. Mike Ramsden will be here at 10 o'clock, and of course we'll be back at 6:30 tomorrow. Till then, have a lovely evening. Bye-bye.
This year for Sport Relief, we'd like you to do 60 million miles. That's 2,400 times around the world. But it couldn't be easier, because we're asking everyone in the UK to do just 1 mile each. That's all of you. To find the Sport Relief Mile in London, go to your BBC local radio station or click on bbc.co.uk/sportrelief or call 0845 605 8000. Raise money and help make the world miles better.
Welcome back. A High Court judge has overturned control orders made against 6 men suspected of involvement in terrorism. The orders had placed severe restrictions on the men's movements. The Home Secretary says he will appeal against the ruling. The Israeli Prime Minister Ehud Olmert says his forces are ready to take extreme action to free a soldier captured by Palestinian militants on Sunday. Israeli aircraft have attacked targets in Gaza, and troops and tanks have taken up positions near the disused airport. A class of drugs called beta blockers should no longer be used as routine to treat high blood pressure. That's according to the NHS drugs watchdog for England and Wales. It says other drugs are better at treating the condition, also known as hypertension, which affects 40% of adults. Tim Henman's hopes of winning Wimbledon are over for another year. He's crashed out after losing to the defending champion. Roger Federer simply outclassed a shell-shocked Henman, cruising to a 3-set victory on centre court in just 1 hour and 24 minutes. And on News 24 tonight, the latest from the Belgian city of Liège, where the discovery of the bodies of 2 missing schoolgirls has reawakened painful memories. That's over on BBC News 24 at 7. And we'll be back tomorrow, as usual, at 6. We'll see you then. Bye-bye.
Next here on BBC One, Granville Fetch a Cloth. A feast of summer sport here on the BBC. All England's World Cup games from now on will be live on BBC TV, radio and online. And if you're a tennis fan, there are highlights from Tim Henman's match against Roger Federer. Today at Wimbledon, tonight from 8, over on BBC Two.
An 18th century naturalist who changed the way we see the world.
It was a time of irrevocable change, of revolutions in the mind.
What had begun as simple garden notes marks the beginning of a crucial imaginative shift in our culture.
Michael Wood tells the story of Gilbert White, the Nature Man, tonight at 9 on BBC 4.
This is the story of war on Earth.
Welcome to Torchwood. Woke up one morning and there they all were. Ghosts everywhere.
They're bleeding through the fault lines. I sent that thing back into hell.
What are they?
Cybermen.
Doctor Who, Saturday at 7 on BBC One.
Do you want me to put my name to a panel show where we steal from Have I Got News for You, we borrow from Buzzcocks, and we hire Z-list celebrities?
Exactly.
Where do I sign?
Rob Brydon's Annually Retentive. Both sides of the camera on a completely original celebrity panel show. Coming soon to BBC Three.
He thinks he's above the law, the smooth Judge John Deed, in an hour, here on BBC One.